Welcome to the Underdog Sniper podcast. I am your host, MGCovers. Greatly appreciate you guys tuning in. This is episode 28. Really appreciate you guys tuning in live. Let me give you the outline of what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how we did last week because it's interesting. I'm actually really happy this morning because it felt like we had a losing week and we were extremely profitable last week. We'll talk about NCAA football. Ton of progress we've made with that model. Feel really good about that. And probably the most interesting part of this podcast we're going to talk about is NFL football, which is, in my opinion, extremely unpredictable right now, which is not good if you're in the sports betting business. On the left is our betting log for NCAA football. And over there at the top right, if I can pull it up, is our betting log for NFL. So another winning week for NCAA football, and we had a losing week for NFL, very close to turn a profit. And I'll get back to that, and we'll cover that in just a second. But this is interesting and a good point to make about this business. On Mondays, I settle with my runner. A lot of people call it a runner. That was my term for it. And then that's the old school term for it, is a runner. And then people today now call it a mover. It's just basically a guy that you send your plays to get money down on games. And we went 11-11 for the week, which felt like a losing week, but we had a winning week. We almost made $1,000 for the week. We settled at $828 profit, going 8-8. So if you're curious what a low average week would be, there you go. So I was actually really proud of that because it actually felt like a losing week. And again, you have to understand about what you're doing in this business. This is a business, and the premise of any business is to turn a profit. And if you're listening, you might say, well, how did you turn a profit going 11-11? Well, managing in your plays, unit size, all that. So for college football, we wagered 1/3 unit on all of our plays. So we had about $3,300 at risk for college football. We felt real good about that model. And then we had a soccer play early in the week we felt really good about. We wagered a third unit there. So that hit. So that was $333 profit for soccer. And then college football was about $1,400 profit. And then, of course, we had a losing day in NFL, but we only wagered 1/5 unit, which is $200 for all of our NFL plays. So we had $3,300 at risk for college football. That was smart. And we only had about $1,400 at risk for NFL. So obviously winning day in college football, losing day in NFL. And if I could do it in retrospect, I just sent this to clients, I would have wagered 1/10 unit. So instead of having $1,400 at risk yesterday, I would only had $700 at risk if I could do it again. And that would have been a much smarter way to approach NFL, considered it was the first actual live real dollars for NFL with that new model. But all in all, still a profitable week for us, which is, again, the most important thing in this business is to turn a profit. So let's dive into talking about college football. If you see that on the screen, again, I'm so excited about this model. We made it, this is a new model, and the way we've approached it this year, I think the way that I'm actually calculating the lines is like, it's real good. I'm really excited. So for the week, it went 7-4. And I want to tell you a mistake I made, not this past week, but the week before last. I didn't put all my plays at once. And what ended up happening late in the day is I got influenced by line movement. I backed off of one play and played another play. If I would have played the model plays, this is from 2 weeks ago, we would have gone 4-3. But instead, I waited. I got influenced by line. Not saying that line movement's not important, but the way this model is, it's basically a plug and play, complete bottom up model. So whatever the model says to play, we're going to play it. I didn't do that. Ended up going 4-4. Whereas if I'd have played the model plays, we'd have gone 4-3. Learning that lesson this week, I made it real simple. I played everything. I sent out all 11 plays. wagered on myself at 10:39 on Saturday morning. And what was interesting, I got a lot of feedback. I say a lot. I think 2 or 3 clients sent emails or DMs back on Telegram like, hey, this is a much better way, because they could get all their plays in. They didn't have to wait around me sending them. And really, that's if you're going to play the model, that's probably a good way to do it, especially for me, because we weren't influenced by line movement late in the day. Now, I will say with the model, we did get lucky with the Charlotte play. Charlotte had a late touchdown and got us on winning on the money line. However, that was still the right play on the money line, because I think it was like a plus. If I'd have played the spread, it'd been +5. So again, if it's less than a touchdown, this goes for NFL, this goes for college football. Much more advantageous to play that on the money line. So super excited about progress we made there. Making sure I'm not missing nothing. I got some points made here, but yeah. So college football, everything feels good to go. I don't anticipate any changes to that model, and we're rocking and rolling there. Now, let's dive over into NFL, which is going to dominate the majority of this podcast. Let me pull this up on the screen where you guys can see it. So what we actually played yesterday, we had Pittsburgh Rams. Pittsburgh late comeback. Rams felt like they were in it. But, I mean, every game in NFL is close. Tampa Bay, that was a blowout win. New Orleans lost. Carolina. We had Washington. That was a good big win there. Played that on the money line. And then the Chargers, played them on the money line as well, and that was a loss. Now, went 2-5 minus 2.45 units. It's interesting about that Chargers game. If we would have won the Chargers, a lot of ifs, but we would have actually had a winning day. We'd have pulled in half a unit of profit, and we would have went 3-4, yeah, instead of 2-5. And that was another reason why I didn't hedge. And what I mean by that is, if you're new, don't know what hedging is, we played the money line dog for Washington and Chargers. So we had Washington at +164, Chargers at +295. So both of those teams went up. And I did check this, by the way. When Chargers were up 10-0, you could have hedged it and played the Chiefs, the opposite side, for +151. And I'm not sure I didn't check the Washington one, because I think when I checked it, I'm not sure if I did, because I think at the same time the Washington game was 14-7. Now, we could have hedged there, guaranteed profit. The reason that I didn't, because again, it looked like Washington was going to win that game, and if Chargers would have won that, we would have won outright. Whereas if I would have hedged both those games, even though technically we would have made more than we actually made, we would have lost less than we did this way. That was the reason that I didn't. And I think a lot of times, with regards to hedging, I think you need to have that game plan before the game starts, so that there's no indecision in the middle of when you're actually like wagering. But all in all, not a bad start to NFL. However, I'm going to share something else with you. Let's pull up. Yeah, let me pull up. This is another model that I back tested. So I basically had 3 models. Let me go through this. I'll show you this. I had 3 models for NFL. This model that you're looking at now, this one here, we'll go through this. This model was 29-19 last year, back testing 60%. So that it hit 60%. There's another model I tested, 18.76 units for last year, and it hit 12.46 units for 2022. And then the model that we actually played, the one I previously showed you, we didn't back test it, but it was up 5.7 units for week 3. All 3 of those models, all 3 of them had losing weeks for this past week in NFL. And the way NFL feels right now to me, and this may be an overreaction for me, but I went on Twitter last night and looked at some just hearing some different sharps talk, some guys that I follow, it definitely feels extremely unpredictable. And what's causing that, I'm not sure, but it almost feels like whatever a team does one week, it's going to be an opposite last week. Because I don't believe you. How many people would have? I wonder if how many people would have Buffalo getting blown out like that, because they absolutely got destroyed, like just absolutely blown out. And I don't know if I could pull this line movement up. Yeah, that might be a better thing to do. Let me pull up the line movement from yesterday because it was way off. And that just goes to show even the, sharps are struggling with this as well. Okay, there we go. So we got line movement up from yesterday. And I think the big one was, and this is the reason we backed off of this game. Let's see here. Yeah, you have Minnesota was a 2. It bumped to 2.5, and probably that was an overreaction. The market overreacted to Jordan Love playing. But I'll tell you this about Minnesota. Minnesota is probably, and that's via our power rankings too, the best team in NFL right now. But there were still some huge, huge surprises with that. Let's just go down. Let's just see how accurate line move was. All right, Pittsburgh. That was one that felt like an easy game to cap, right? Opened at +1, line moved to 2.5, and Pittsburgh had to come back, but Indianapolis pretty much dominated that one. So line movement was incorrect there. Line moved against Minnesota. Minnesota won. Houston, line opens at 5, moves to 5.5. We'll use bookmaker. Line movement was wrong there. Atlanta opened as a pick, moved to 2.5. That one was correct. Chicago opened at 3, stayed at 3. If the line doesn't move, that favors the favorite. Chicago wins. All right, Tampa was right. We actually played this one. Tampa was 2.5. It moved down to 1.5. They got that one right. Line movement was correct. Cincinnati opened at 5.5, moved down to 5. Carolina from 5.5 down to 5. Probably an overreaction to, again, what I was just previously talking about. From 5.5 down to 5. And this is an excellent point about line movement, and especially how I'm actually showing it here, because I'm actually showing you open versus the closing line. So there's probably some public influence there as well. And I don't know if you can necessarily say that like that move is sharp, and that might not be the best way to interpret it. Meaning like the best way, let's pull this up and show you this, is you should probably look at it like the late moves. Like, let's just do this. Let's see what happens here. Let's just look at the late move. And there you go. That's a prime example. So that line was 4.5 at 12:26, and at 12:31 it moves to 5. So that movement is late and it's subtle in favor of Cincinnati. Cincinnati wins, and it was basically a blowout. And Carolina was competitive there for a while. So my point is that might be the better way to look at line movement and to assess it from a sharp perspective, as opposed to looking at it from open and close. Because I think if you're looking at line movement this way, you're looking at the opening line and looking at what the closing line is and trying to draw some analysis from that. I don't think you can actually use that, because I think there's a ton of public bias, meaning Carolina won last week. People were shocked. Oh, wow, Carolina's, quote, good team this week, and then get blown out this week. That's Denver. That was a surprising one. You had a line open at 8. It stayed at 8. That favors the favorite. Denver wins that one 10-9. That was a crazy game. And then, of course, Washington, line movement was correct there. Opened at 4.5, moved down to 3.5. Excuse me. And then San Francisco, line opened at 10.5, stayed at 10.5. That was a blowout. Vegas opened at 1.5, moves to 2.5. And so that basically was in favor of Cleveland. Line movement was wrong there. KC minus 4.5 up to 6.5. That was a win and cover, barely. And then you had Baltimore was at 2, moved up to 2.5. Baltimore wins. And of course, Giants and Dallas from the previous week, 6.5 down to 5.5. So even though Giants didn't win, that line actually did cover. So again, what I'm saying is I think overall the marketplace is a little bit unsettled with what to do with NFL so far. And evidence of that is basically all three of these models having losing weeks. Now, what my actual plan is, so if you're wondering like from a perspective of, hey, what are you going to do now? I still don't want to abandon. Let me see if I can pull up. Yeah, these are the actual lines for the model we actually play. We had Dallas -2. That was a no play. Pittsburgh, we had -17. And then, of course, the mistake I made was if we'd have played this as is, let's see what would happen here. Yeah, we didn't play Minnesota yesterday. In retrospect, should have. Again, the reason we backed off was the line, but that would have been a good wager. What else in here? And then the Cleveland Vegas, didn't play that one, but probably should have. And then again, that Buffalo was crazy. We had Buffalo -16. And then tonight's games, looking at this particular model, the one we're currently using, we have Miami -6 and we have Seattle -6. And the actual line for that is Miami -2.5 and Detroit is the favorite. So we have value there. We have value with Seattle and Miami. So not sure I'm going to play those, but that's the value we have. So again, that's the difficult part about this business. And if you decide to get into this business, just know that diving into this arena, it will be difficult. And there's no escaping that. So I'm probably going to research today, maybe do some more back testing with some of these other models, and then make a decision the direction we need to go. Now, one other thing I do want to mention, and I can't say what this is, and this is going to sound crazy. So I'll go ahead and preface this by saying, if you're listening to this and what I'm getting ready to say, if you don't believe this, I'm totally cool with that. But those of you that have followed me for a while know I'm open about everything, and I'm not just going to make something up for credibility, etc. You're always going to get the truth. This concept, and I mentioned this to clients, has gone 16-2 NFL year to date. 16-2. It went 5-1 yesterday. I sent this to clients. Let me see it. Let me pull it up. Yeah, it went 5-1 yesterday and 16-2 year to date. And in my opinion, that might be the best way to play NFL, because again, going back to the premise of this, the most important thing in this business is to turn a profit. So if you're looking at all the options, and that seems like an obvious way to play, it's not really a model. It's just a situational angle to play. 16-2. I mean, that's probably the best way to play. And obviously it's sexy to have a model and have lines, but if you've got some other concept that's working better and you have an edge, you're smart to play that and do that and have that edge, as opposed to like forcing your model to like produce a profit. Because again, this model that we have is new. All the other three models had losing weeks. And I just think NFL feels right now to me the way baseball felt 3 years ago. And of course, baseball was very profitable the last 2 years. But if you back up to 3 years ago, every time I placed a wager, it never felt comfortable. And even yesterday, it felt that way with NFL. So again, if I'm ranking difficulty level for NFL right now versus college football, hands down, NCAA football 10 times easier to handicap than NFL. Because again, in both sports, the team that wins is going to cover a majority of the time. But then picking that team to win that's going to win in NFL, extremely difficult. Because if you go back Buffalo, Baltimore, you probably a lot of people could have made a case for Buffalo, Pittsburgh. I'd be willing to bet that there were a ton of sharps on Pittsburgh as well. Nobody had that Denver game. Nobody had that. Nobody had Denver winning that one. Cleveland, Vegas. I don't think a lot of people had Vegas winning that one. Washington, Arizona. Washington was a dog, even though they blew them out. So again, NFL is very difficult to cap this year. So, and again, if you're listening to this, remember this. This is real important. Because this is a business, you do not have to wager on it. Just because there's games on Thursday night, Monday night, and Sunday, you do not have to wager on NFL. How about that? Because again, it's a business. So as you can tell by this podcast, I feel frustrated and a little bit confused by it. And again, at the same time, I don't want to overreact just because of how the model performed. Because again, if San Diego pulls that game out, the LA Chargers pull that game out against KC and win, we're profitable for NFL. So not sure what I'm going to do with NFL, but definitely will approach with caution, and then may go to this other concept that's working, even though again, it's not as sexy as having a model, but it's definitely extremely profitable as of right now. So anyway, so that's a wrap for episode 28 of the podcast. Greatly appreciate you guys tuning in, and appreciate the support and all the growth on YouTube that we've had. And I'll talk to you guys some more during the week. Peace.